Hello, folks. Welcome to episode 47 of Inspiring Insights. Chiaret, Konastantu, Gunamahagat, Ishmisha, Erin Edwards. Hello, good day. Thank you for coming. My name is Erin. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. And this is episode 47 of Inspiring Insights. I am absolutely overjoyed to be with you here all on this fantastic evening with you fantastic people for this episode. We have with us today someone very special who has an amazing podcast of her own, Conjuring Up Courage. But before I introduce her, let me introduce myself for all of you new followers out there. And just an aside, thank you to Thrill Two Birds who have sponsored this episode and recently helped me with a brand spanking new website. They also do analytics, social media, branding, and a whole lot more. Check them out at thrill2birds.com for all your small business entrepreneurial needs. Highly recommend them. And I want to acknowledge that as I search and I understand my own Irish and Welsh lineage across the pond over here on Turtle Island, I can't go any further without a deep thanks and a deep appreciation for the folks that have come before me. This is Tekaronto, a land that was and is still tended by many nations, including the Anishinaabeg, Chippewa, Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and more recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. I am a newcomer and a settler here, and I have been invited to lift the one spoon with all others who live here and care for this land within the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Treaty. I commit to respectful collaboration and representation here on this podcast. Just as I have been invited to lift that one spoon, I invite you all now to peaceably weave with me a new world of possibility in wellness and start paving the way for a more accessible wellness industry. Yes, that means decolonizing language, careers, the ways in which we think and act about medicine, about mindfulness, about spirituality, and about healing. And that means uplifting and supporting voices of folks with different experiences than my own. Podcasts truly have so much potential for healing, and I am so excited to be a part of that with you here today. I can't wait to introduce our guests and hear from them today about their own lived experience. And before we start the show, don't forget to like us, to subscribe to us, and throw us a happy review here and there. It would mean the world to me. Thank you for popping in and saying hello, listening in. And without further ado, episode 47, Conjuring Up Courage. Shohreh Davoodi is a self-trust coach, writer, and the host of Conjuring Up Courage podcast. Her pronouns are also she and her. She's dedicated to helping people move through self-doubt and shame so they can live their lives with intention and step into their motherfucking magic. Booyah.
Woo.
Shohreh works and plays in Austin, Texas, on land that is unceded territory of the Tonkawa and Comanche tribes. She's obsessed with rainbows and glitter, and not just because she's hella queer, and she's one of the most thoughtful people you'll ever meet. When Shohreh's not in front of her computer, you can find her defying gravity on her trapeze, doing crafty things, and loving on her two pups, Alamo and Peppermint. Hi, Shohreh. Nice to virtually meet you here.
Nice to meet you too. I'm so excited. We finally get to chat today.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. And, I know your bio does a little bit of does yourself maybe a little bit of a justice, but I want to give you the opportunity to maybe say a little bit more about, just before we begin, kind of how you got to this place that you're in. How did you start your own podcast? How did you become a self-trust coach? I'm curious, and you don't have to go all the way back, but give the listeners a little bit more juice here.
Well, I mean, I was born on one of the coldest days. That's actually true, but I won't go back that far. Fun fact, my mom has told me that I was born on one of the coldest days they had in Wisconsin. It was so cold that they actually couldn't deliver flowers to the hospital because they would die before they got there.
Oh, so, no.
Yes. Now everyone has gotten this fun fact of my birth. I'm a Sagittarius, born in December, for those who are wondering.
Thank you.
But yes, I mean, I guess to give you the highlights, every time I go on a podcast podcast. It's funny, the journey has moved a little further. So I'm like, oh gosh, now where to start? Where do I want to do this? But I have an interesting sort of career path where I went to college for music. I was a music performance major and I played the oboe, realized that I didn't want to do music performance for my career and ended up going to law school, worked as a lawyer for a very brief stint of time, just over a year, before deciding, you know what, I want to go out and start my own business and do something different. And that was almost 5 years ago now. That the end of this year will have been 5 years as a solopreneur, which is bananas to me when I think about like how much has happened in that amount of time. Like in some ways it's gone by really quickly, and in some ways it has stretched on for forever. But when I first started, I was doing more personal training, and then I expanded into more of the health and wellness coaching realm. I got my certified intuitive eating counselor. I really started bringing more social justice into the forefront of the work that I was doing. And then it was this past year that I decided, I guess back in 2020, so kind of the pandemic made me rethink my business, figure out what I wanted it to look like going forward, what would make me feel the most fulfilled. And also at that time, I was going through a lot of personal turmoil. I was going through a divorce and a lot of identity stuff, which I'm sure we'll come back to at some point. And I was like, what do I actually want my business to look like? And what I realized is that the thread that had been running through all of my work up to that point was self-trust. It was this piece where I was helping people come home to themselves and return to their bodies and learn how to interpret what their bodies were saying to them, where the world had kind of taken them away from that. And once I had that thread, I was like, oh, well, this is what I do. Like, I am a self-trust coach. I help people learn how to trust themselves again. And even when I was doing the health and wellness work specifically, it was always more than that. Like, clients were always asking me questions about all kinds of things in their lives. And they'd come to me and they'd be like, is this okay? Like, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I love that stuff because health and wellness, and exercise, all these pieces, they can't be isolated. You can try to just focus on those things, but at the end of the day, everything flows outward from there to the rest of your life. It's all intermixed together. And if we try to isolate it, then things will start happening in other parts of our lives that we don't even realize what the connections are. And some people work very comfortably like in those spaces and they kind of dabble outside of it. And for me, I've always really liked, what's the big picture? How can we take these pieces and see what is that going to change in your life or in your relationships or these other aspects? So doing the self-trust coaching has felt so much more comfortable and better for me, and that I was pretty much already doing it. I just had named it something else. But yeah, it's coming up on about a year since I made that switch and officially took on that title. And it's been one of the best years, definitely the best year that I've had as a business owner, with feeling aligned with the work that I'm doing. So it's kind of how I got here. Podcast, I have my own podcast called Conjuring Up Courage. Started out as the Redefining Health and Wellness podcast, and then it got rebranded when I rebranded the rest of my business. Just took it to an every other week release schedule. I'd been doing weekly for 2 years straight, which was wonderful, but so intense, basically like a part-time job on the side. Is now you getting into podcasting, how much work it requires, but that's my baby. It's my pet project. I've met so many friends and colleagues and people from doing the podcast that I would not want to stop it. So I've decided to just pull it back a little bit so I can keep it going for years to come.
Wow. From playing the oboe to being in front of us here now.
I know.
I honor your journey, Shohreh. Thank you so much for just sharing that. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, you did touch on it a little bit. Maybe we can get into what your own definition of self-trust is, or maybe what trust is in general, first off, kind of a general approach. And what does it mean in the context of wellness? And I know that, and I've been following your own podcast for a while too, redefining wellness. And I think even your own redefining of your own podcast name into Conjuring Up Courage, speaks to that, and how you are more aligned with your own level of trust at this point in your life. And yeah, maybe let's just start macro and then go a little bit more micro.
Sure. So self-trust, exactly. We can just start with trust as the general concept. So what does it mean when you trust somebody else? That's where I tend to start with people. Like if there's someone that I trust in my life, it's that I know that they're going to be there for me and that they are going to support me. I know that I can talk to them about anything, right? The easy stuff, the hard stuff, the boundaries that may need to be set between us. Like we have this communication that exists between us, and we have a level of respect that exists between us. And so self-trust, it's the same, but it's between you and your body, essentially. It's what we are able to apply to ourselves. And a lot of times we just don't have that trusting relationship with our bodies. And this is no fault of our own. We live in a world that at every turn is teaching us that we can't be trusted and that there are people outside of us and systems outside of us that are the authority on our bodies, and we need to listen to them. And that's why my job exists, because we have these systems in place that are making it really difficult for us to trust ourselves. And when you do not trust yourself, just like when you can't trust somebody else, the relationship is going to be very poor. As soon as there's someone in your life who has broken your trust, or that you've decided you don't trust them, you can't be anywhere near as close to them, right? You don't want to necessarily listen to them. You don't want to help them out. And what people don't realize is like, that's what we have going on with our own bodies, is when you cannot trust yourself, it causes problems everywhere in your life, because your body's like, I don't know what I'm going to get from you. You don't know what you're going to get back from your body. And so it's just constant miscommunication, infighting. And in developing self-trust, we're trying to make that relationship more peaceful, more respectful between the two of you.
Yeah, and so necessary, I think, too. And these days, I feel like with all the marketing that's thrown at us, all the ads on and the algorithms on social media, it's so hard to know what we in our hearts need,
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the role of the coach, is to reflect exactly back what the person is saying and if it's in line with them or not. And
Well,
I
you
love
mentioned
that piece.
wellness too, right? And so
Yeah.
you can do this well as a wellness, health, exercise coach, or you can do this very poorly, because so much of the wellness industry contributes to the lack of self-trust that people have. When coaches step in and they try to say, I know what's better for your body than you do, instead of listening and reflecting back what they're hearing, that is actually going to worsen self-trust instead of increasing it. There's so many people in the wellness industry who are out there being a part of that external source of saying, oh yeah, you can't be trusted. Your body doesn't know what it wants. But if you come to me, if you pay me money and you spend time with me, I have all the magic answers. And what I want people to realize is that, no, you have the magic inside of you. You have the answers. A coach's job is just to help you unlock it. It's not to give them to you, because we don't know. We can't possibly know. That's between you and your body.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. Preach. I love that. I really, really like that. And I found that too. I come from the naturopathic medical world, and same thing, I went into that field thinking that my clients, my patients will be more open to, discovering their own magic and not necessarily wanting a pill, right? That magic pill that we talk about, the magic bullet. More so than ever, I see now that when people come to doctors, practitioners, coaches, their physiotherapists, anybody, they're looking for guidance, and they don't necessarily, they want to be taught, they don't necessarily need to just go back every week. They want to be taught. And I think that's the difference with our generation, and with the generation coming up after us, is that people want to know a little bit more, which is so good. So good. Shohreh, your thoughts on intersectionality in the wellness industry? And I know that, I really admire your own podcast, because you have quite a diverse selection of people and guests that come on. And I wanted to know why you think it's important, within the healthcare context, within the wellness kind of industry. How can we create this kind of more social justice oriented, even queer positive spaces, or safer spaces, as we say now?
And this is such an important question. And it's something that I've really dedicated a lot of my work to. Like you mentioned with the podcast, like it was really important to me that that podcast reflects a diverse number of guests and people who are coming in who have different marginalizations, different life experiences, both for me as the host to get the opportunity to learn and uplift those people, and also for my listeners to get to learn from people who are having different experiences from them. And I think first, whenever we talk intersectionality, I always want to acknowledge where that term comes from. For those who may not know, Kimberly Crenshaw is the one who coined that term going back to my birth year. We were talking about in 1989, which is how I always remember it. And when she was using that term, she used it to explain how Black women can't be viewed as just women or just Black, because those two identities intersect and create unique challenges for Black women specifically. So that's where that term comes from. And now it has been used and expanded to talk about all of the different intersections. So not just Black women, but what happens when we add even on top of that, right? What about Black queer women? What about Black trans women? What about me as a gay mixed race person, right? Like intersectionality is about looking at how do your identities intersect to determine how you're able to move around in the world. And the wellness industry, as you and I both know, is one of those spaces that is dominated by folks with very privileged identities. A lot of the people with the biggest platforms and the loudest voices are white, cishet, affluent men. Women as well, but it's people who have a lot of privilege. And these are the people, these coaches that I just mentioned, who are the ones who are like, well, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Just come to me. The way that is working for me is the way that you should do it. And that's not an intersectional approach. That ignores the fact that they have certain privileges that are going to give them advantages, not only in what they can access in the world, but also in things like health and well-being, right? We know that there are social determinants of health. We know that something like your zip code, where you were born, something that we have no control over, is one of the biggest impacts in terms of what are your health outcomes over the course of your life. And so when we have people with all this privilege in the wellness space who are saying things like, oh, anyone can be this size, anyone can be quote unquote healthy if they just do these things, that ignores our reality. And so I think the wellness industry, especially, we have got to be elevating the voices of folks who are marginalized, especially folks who are multiply marginalized. We need to make sure that those are the people who have platforms. We need to make sure that they're being paid for their labor. We need to make sure that if we are having panels or keynotes, that these are the people who are speaking, instead of this just like complete straight whitewashed thing that we've had going on up to this point, because it completely changes the messaging of what wellness means, right? It redefines it, which is a lot of the work I was doing with the podcast when it was called Redefining Health and Wellness. Is I wanted those voices and those stories, because that's not what we get in the mainstream health and wellness industry. And I think that for those who are more privileged, like really assessing and thinking about where are the places that you're taking up space that you don't need to be. And that's not asking you to disappear. That's not asking you to be like, you're not allowed to be in this industry, but to be more intentional and thoughtful about how you're showing up, who you're supporting, who you're giving your money to, what opportunities that you are saying yes to that maybe would be better going to somebody else who has different identities and experiences than you. Like that's really what we need in the wellness space. And what people also need to remember is that there's more than enough to go around. People get in this scarcity mindset of, well, I have to take every opportunity. I have to do every single thing, because if I give it to somebody else, then there won't be enough left for me, right? This is what fuels all of white feminism, is the scarcity mindset of like, I'm going to take the crumbs that white men have given me, and I'm going to throw everybody else under the bus, you know, BIPOC women and people with other identities. And it's like, no. If we all take care of each other and uplift each other, there is enough to go around. Like, it is the white supremacy mindset that is that scarcity mindset of let me just gather the crumbs and everyone for themselves. We've seen how everyone for themselves works in a global pandemic setting. It doesn't work fucking well. So we need to get out of that, out of this individualistic thinking, and really think about the collective and thinking about how we can all uplift each other.
Yes, there is enough. There is really enough to go around, and especially in the wellness context, it's different, of course, in the US than Canada, in terms of public versus private. But even still, I think, just because we have a different system doesn't mean that even privatized coaches like yourself or myself cannot help as many people as we want to. There is really enough to go around. I love that. So, just from your website, and folks out there, you should definitely check out Shohreh's website. It's amazing. ShohrehDavoodi.com. And so, I see all across your website, rainbows and fun, kind of like crystal balls, and just like these images of magic, this concept of magic, motherfucking magic, as you say.
Motherfucking magic, specifically.
If we could swear here, which everyone knows that we do. So, I'm curious as to what your big long-term vision for the world is. How does everybody here, how do we help folks step into their own motherfucking magic? What if everybody did that?
What if everybody did that?
Oh my goodness.
How wonderful would that be? Well, it's interesting because the phrasing of step into assumes a world where we don't do that, right? The implication is that it's something that our magic, our motherfucking magic, is something that we've shrunk away from, or that we've stepped back from, or have ignored. And that is because for many of us, it's unsafe to step into our motherfucking magic. It might be physically unsafe. It might be emotionally unsafe. It can be very risky for folks to do that, especially the more marginalized that you are as an individual, depending on where you live and your family situation. It may not be safe or seen as acceptable to be your authentic self and to live authentically. So I first just want to acknowledge that there are real world barriers to being able to do that. And then that's the answer too. How do we make it a world where we can all live in our magic? Is we have to get rid of those barriers. So we have to do this at the systemic level of, we need to have a world where everyone is treated justly, and that people are not treated differently because of their skin color, or because of their size, or because of who they love. And that's obviously like a huge, big, long-term goal that we are all working towards. And for me, what I found in my work is that I wanted to build a framework and a structure that lets people have individual healing while also moving all of us towards collective justice. And the way that I've done that is I have created my Pillars of Self-Trust framework, which is a three-pronged framework of consciousness practices, care practices, and courage practices. And the way that those three things go together is that on the consciousness front, that's the awareness piece. We all have to start with figuring out, like, why am I not able to live authentically? Why can't I step into this magic that Shohreh keeps telling me about? Like, I want some of that. And it's all the things we've been talking about. So it's the awareness of these systems and how they play in your life. It's the awareness of how those systems have interacted with the people in your life, whether that is the family that you grew up with, or teachers and mentors that you had, or relationships that you've had, and then how those have affected you. So it's really learning to see, like, how am I holding myself back, or how have I been held back, and where am my body and I not on the same page? That's that first piece. And then once you start building that, you have these care practices where this is about actually responding to your body. This is treating your body with the respect and love and kindness that it deserves, whether it is through nourishing your body with certain foods, or moving your body because it feels good to do so, or getting enough rest, or getting out of a stressful work situation, all of those aspects of care. And then once you have the consciousness and care, the courage practices is the real key component, because that individual healing allows you to then go put what you've learned back out into the world. It changes how you're going to show up in your interpersonal relationships with people that are in your most immediate circle. And then it also allows you to step up and have the energy to do activism work, to do social justice work, to say, you know what, I want the world to look differently, and I'm going to take the steps, whether that is through volunteering or protesting or organizing, to help with that. And we can't just have the individual, right? I've already said this in this conversation, and I've built that into the self-trust work that I'm doing with folks, because the magic in you is meant to be shared. If you can step into your motherfucking magic and you can be that example, that alone gives other people permission to do the same, especially if you are marginalized, if you're someone who historically has been kept in the shadows, has been told that, no, you're not allowed to do that. We don't want you to be visible. When you are visible, when other people see that, then your community benefits. And it also normalizes it for other people who maybe don't know as much about these marginalizations or these communities, or they have misconceptions about them. They can say, oh, no, I see this. I have this real living world example of people who are having these experiences, and it changes the culture for absolutely everyone.
Yes. What you're really doing for your whole life, your career, is just dropping rainbow glitter bombs everywhere on people, on groups,
Yes.
you know, everyone. I just love that. Just like scatter the rainbow everywhere we go.
Right. And they're bombs. Like, you know, the bomb is the key component here, because it's like, yes, it's rainbow and glitter, but it's like, it packs the punch. This is why we have rainbow glitter bombs.
Yes. Yeah. I thank you for explaining that as well. Kind of that whole approach of stepping into, and you know, as it applies to several different people, different diversities, different minorities, because when we're in the spaces that we're in, it's really hard to see otherwise unless we're doing that constant work, you know, and of stepping back and seeing that. So thank you.
Yeah.
And the self-trust pillars. Yeah, I really need to hear more about those for sure. On your social media, Shohreh, you know, you talk about courage, you talk about confidence, which you've just touched on. Can we get into the nitty-gritty of maybe are these two different things? Or, you know, is courage one thing, is confidence another thing? And how do we conjure up all of that to make us amazingly magical?
Yes. So confidence and courage are two similar concepts, but they're not the same. And they often get confused by people in a way that holds them back. And so I do think it's worth discussing the differences between them. Confidence is about self-assurance. It's believing in yourself and your abilities. And it's literally defined by the absence of uncertainty. So if you are confident, that means that you're not uncertain. You know the thing and you're going for the thing. Anyone can be confident about anything, regardless of if you should be confident about it, right? I have this great mug that my friend gave me, and the slogan on the mug is like, give me the confidence of a mediocre white man, because right, there's a standard of mediocre white men being confident about things they have no business being confident about. So confidence can be a little dangerous in that way, in that we can be overly confident, or we can feel confident about things where it's like, I don't know, like what I have done to really feel this confidence. Then, you know, courage, on the other hand, courage is about a willingness to do something, to take a risk, even when you're not confident in the outcome. And people will often think that, like, oh, no, courage is like confidence, right? Like, if I am going to do the courageous thing, then I shouldn't have any fears or doubts about it. And that's not true at all. Like, courage is literally defined as having fear and doing it anyway. And when courage is the thing at play, like, you're almost always going to have fear and uncertainty about the outcome. And the courageous thing is that you're saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to go for it anyways, because I've decided that, like, the potential for benefit here outweighs the risks, even though I don't know what is going to happen. So courage is actually a prerequisite for confidence. We have courage first, and then we get the confidence. Again, assuming that your confidence isn't like an inflated, unnecessary confidence. If we're going about this in a way that is more healthy, then courage is the thing that's going to let you take that initial running leap into the unknown, right? You're like, oh God, I don't know what's down there. It could be like a pit of snakes, or maybe it's like Lil Nas X's stripper pole down into hell. I don't know. That would be great. If that's what I find when I jump off the cliff, like I will jump on it and I will go all the way down. That's
Yeah,
it.
sure.
But we don't know. We don't know. So we can't be confident because we don't know. But once you've taken that leap, confidence is what happens when then you land on your feet and you get the practice in, you get the reps in. So if I have been courageous, then confidence is something that is going to come later. So just to give you an example, I said we could come back to kind of my divorce and identity stuff. Your listeners may not know this, but mine certainly do, which is that over the course of the pandemic, I ended up coming out as gay and divorcing my husband, who I'd been with for a long time. Without getting into that whole story, when I asked my husband, my ex-husband, for a divorce, I was not confident in that choice. It took a lot of courage to make that decision and to ask for it. And I was staring down so many unknowns. I knew that my life was going to implode. I wasn't sure what would happen. I wasn't sure what the effects would be on me, on my business, on my relationships. But I decided that, the potential benefit of what my life could be if I lived it more authentically outweighed all of those other risks. So I went into it with courage, but not confidence. Now it's been a year since I asked for that divorce, and it was complete shit and hell over the past year, to be clear. But now I'm confident that I made the right choice because I have seen what resulted from that. I have been able to live my life more authentically and take those steps to move forward. And now I'm confident. Now I can say, yes, that was absolutely the right choice. But I had to have the courage first. If I was waiting around for confidence, I never would have gotten it, because you can't get confidence before you do the thing. And that's what I want to impress upon people, because this is true for small little things and it's true for big things, like deciding that you want to get a divorce. At some point, you just have to jump off that cliff and hope for the best that you're going to run into Lil Nas X and not the snakes.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. It's a real world example too. So thank you for that courage even to share that. And it sounds a lot like, the aspect of courageousness itself is being able to move forward with this sense of humility too, and saying, I don't know what's going to happen. And, everybody out there, hands up, if we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen tonight. Who knows?
And we hate not knowing. That's the problem.
Exactly.
We hate it because we are taught that we want to control the situation. We want to know all the possible outcomes of things that could happen. And yes, I'm a planner. I'm an organizer. I didn't just one day be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to ask for a divorce. It's fine. Obviously I thought through the possibilities and the different things that could happen and mentally prepared other stuff in my life to do that. Yes, we want to do that, but people tend to take that to the extreme and try to be like, I'm not going to move on this thing until I've controlled every possible outcome or aspect of it. And we can't, because there's too many variables and there's almost always other people involved, and we can only control ourselves and our own decisions, and we cannot control how other people are going to react, how they're going to feel, or what they're going to do in return. And that's one of the biggest lessons that anyone can learn.
Thank you, Shohreh. Anything else that the listeners, that you want to convey? How can they get in touch with you? All the lovely social media links, etc. And I can also put them in the show notes below as well for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm a self-trust coach. So the two ways that I take clients at this time is that I do one-on-one coaching, which is a 6-month container where you work with me over the course of that 6 months. I only have a handful of one-on-one coaching clients at a time, but I do have openings right now for folks who would want to work more closely with me. And then my baby program that I created in the rebrand is called Follow Your Arrow. It is a 1-year membership program where each month has a new topic. You get lessons. We do group coaching calls. And it's really great because this work, the self-trust work, it's hard. It requires a lot of inner work and questioning, and to do it in community is really beautiful, because, you know, in my group that I have now, like, people are building relationships with each other. They're learning, like, oh, I'm going to say this thing out loud that I don't think anyone struggles with. And then 3 other people raise their hand and they're like, oh, I totally have felt that way too. And like, here's how I handled it. So the group experience is really special to get to meet with other people. So I am opening that back up again for next year. The next cohort is going to start in January of 2022, because, oh my gosh, the year 2022 is coming.
Wow.
So there will be lots of talk about that coming up in like October, November is when that'll be starting to open up to take in new members into that program. I open it starting next year. I'll be opening it twice a year, so people can join the year-long cohort either in January or they can join it in June. Lots of info about that on my website. There's also a interest list on my website, so if you want to be one of the first to know when the program opens back up, you can throw yourself on that. I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is just at Shohreh Davoodi. I am starting to build towards like actually making TikTok content again, and my handle there is also at Shohreh Davoodi. So you can follow me there if you are a TikTok person. And then the other 2 places is my podcast, Conjuring Up Courage, which we've already mentioned. You can listen to that anywhere where you listen to podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. It's in all of the places. And then I have a free email newsletter that I send out most Sundays. It's called the Sunday Share, and that's available on my website as well too, at shohrehdavoodi.com/subscribe. So those are all my places. Come hang out with me on the internet, because it's a rainbow glittery bomb fun time.
That's so amazing. And can I ask you one more question, Shohreh, before I let you
Yes.
go? And this is something that I ask all of my guests here on Inspiring Insights, and that is, what keeps you inspired?
Ooh, gosh, everything. I'm inspired by so many things, but the thing that came to me when you said that was my clients. The people that I work with, whether it's paying people that I work with or it's people who follow me online, are constantly inspiring me with their courage, with their resilience, with how they're meeting the different situations in their lives. And it's the reason that I keep doing what I do, because facilitating interpersonal work like this, it's not easy. And it is very emotionally draining, but it is so worth it to get to see people go from a point A to a point B to a point C, and how they can take one little nugget and use it to change their entire lives. Like, that is just so cool to me. And I think it will never stop being cool to me. So that's what inspires me.
Thank you. That is so wholesome. Shohreh Davoodi, everybody, thank you so much. This has been episode 47 of Inspiring Insights. To check out all the podcast episodes, you can go to my own website at theerinedwards.com. Have a lovely day. So, a little bit about me, Erin, your host here at Inspiring Insights. I am an uprooted Newfoundlander with Irish and Welsh ascendants. I'm the offspring of 2 teachers. I have much to learn and much to step into in my own teachings, including the online mindfulness course that I offer from a more intersectional lens and a more witchy lens. I also run online mindfulness retreats, and they all fall on the Celtic Fire festivals of the year. The next one coming up, of course, is closer to Halloween, and we are celebrating the harvest of Samhain at that point in time. You can check out all my services on my new and improved website at theerinedwards.com. That is TheErinEdwards.com. Now I see clients online. I also see clients face to face. Yes, that is right. If you are in the Toronto, Canada area, please don't be shy. For all of your spiritual grounding needs, I am here for you. Give me an email at hello@reawakenco.com to get in touch.